Thanks very much, Ken, for that didgeridoo playing. Can we please have another round of applause for Ken? And it's so wonderful to see our culture being kept alive by young people like Ken. My name's Pat Thompson. I'm the CEO at Link Up Queensland. I'd like to acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional owners of country we're meeting on today and our elders, past, present. It is from our elders that we get our strength and resilience. I'd also like to acknowledge our board, our chairman, Ken Murphy, Aunty Carr, Willie Prince, Samantha Carr and Linnell Mace, who couldn't be here today. We're really pleased to be hosting this morning tea in partnership with QPAC on the anniversary, which was yesterday, of the National Apology to the Stolen Generations, which of course we know was delivered by Kevin Rudd while he was Prime Minister on the 13th of February in 2008. Our event is being live streamed by QPAC, so I'd also like to extend a special welcome to our virtual audience. Please leave any comments below the live stream or on our Link Up Queensland Facebook page. If people could also now switch off their phones, please. Restrooms are at the back of the room. You can take the lift or the stairs up, and there are accessible restrooms at the front of the room beyond the stage. I'd now like to invite Aunty Cheryl Thompson to perform Welcome to Country. Aunty Cheryl is a Yagara elder and traditional owner and a descendant of King Billy Turner of the Lockley Valley. Her descendants are from Deebing Creek and Perga Missions. Aunty Cheryl has a long history of contributing to her community. She is an elder in residence at several schools in Ipswich and for many years has focused her energy on supporting our people in prisons with regular visits, which they all look forward to. Please welcome Aunty Cheryl.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cheryl Thompson and I am a proud descendant of Yagara people. Our country, Yagara Nation, extends from the mouth of the Brisbane River to the foot of the Toowoomba Ranges. Welcome. It is an honour and a traditional honour to welcome you all on behalf of my ancestors and elders. I would also like to acknowledge the Turrbal people. Commemorating the apology of the stolen generation is an important annual event which Link Up Queensland do a really great job of each year. I am a descendant of King Billy Turner of the Lockyer Valley. King Billy was recognised as a leader of his tribe, which is engraved on his breastplate. The breastplate has been handed down over generations and placed in the Queensland Museum by one of our elders for safekeeping. Great-grandfather Harry Thompson, whose tribal name is Corpajo, married Amy Bunderchart Turner, King Billy's daughter at Devon Creek Mission in the late 1800s. Great-grandfather Amy Turner is buried at, Amy Turner is buried at Perga Mission Cemetery. Great-grandfather Harry Gulper Thompson was born in the 1860s at Normanby Station at Harrisville and was buried in 1947 here at the Boona Cemetery. His son, Harry Thompson Jr. and his wife, Annie Rolfe Thompson, my grandparents, are also buried there at the Boona Cemetery. Grandfather Harry passed away in 1944, before his father, great-grandfather Harry. My grandmother, Amy Thompson, was removed as a little girl. She was around 9 years old when she was brought to Devon Creek Mission from Aramac in central Queensland. Her siblings were removed to Woorabinda. Her sister Grace sent to Lithncombe, and Leanne went to work as servants for a police and doctors. Leanne was removed and brought to Marburg by the doctor she worked for. She lived at Marburg for 17 years as a servant for the doctor and did not know that her sister, my grandmother Annie, was at Perga Mission, just 30 kilometres away. They never saw each other once again, once they were removed. Grandma Annie never saw any of her family again, and sadly, only through the research of Link Up that we realised that Grandmother Annie's own mother, Lizzie Rolfe, was still alive in Longreach after Grandma Annie had her own children, my mother Doris and her siblings. I want to commend the work of Link Up for healing and reuniting our families and for still bringing them home. May the spirits of our ancestors be with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Aunty Cheryl. Our first keynote speaker is Aunty Ruth Hegarty. Aunty Ruth was born in Mitchell in Western Queensland in 1929. You sure 1929, Aunty Ruth? Her late mother and grandparents were descendants of the Gungari people of the Maranoa district. After the families moved to Cherbourg Settlement in 1930, Aunty Ruth was removed from her mother and became a dormitory girl. 21 years later, she married a Cherbourg man, Joe Hegarty Jr., and they raised 8 children. The Hegarty family left Cherbourg in 1966, and since that time, Aunty Ruth has become a respected elder, working tirelessly to improve the way of life for Aboriginal people. Aunty Ruth is an author, an activist and an educator, and was publicly recognised by the Queensland Government in 2010 when she was added to the list of Queensland greats for her tireless campaigning for a fair go for her people. Please welcome Aunty Ruth.
Yuala, in my language, to say hello. You will all have today a copy of my mother's story that Linkup has so graciously ordered to be given out to everyone here in this place. And I wonder, as you read these handouts, I would like to commence my speech today by reading a page from it. Thank you for introducing me, and thank you, Sister, for your welcome as well. That's really wonderful. We acknowledge also all of our people that work so hard in this town. So my desire to reconstruct my mother's story was part due to the apology of Kevin Rudd in 2008, and also because I refused the invitation to go to Canberra to be part of this significant event. My refusal at the time, as now as an elder in my own right, I recognise the pain that my pain and my mother's pain was never really acknowledged. And for her death in 2006 meant the apology was too late for her, too late for me, maybe too late for all of us. Many have passed since. I call my mother, whom I hardly knew, a graceful and dignified woman who never complained or got angry with me or what happened to her. She lived her long life to the best of her ability, but no doubt the apology did wake a nation's conscience and resulted in many tears and forgiveness than ever have been felt or expressed before. Our people travelled far and wide to hear the apology and to witness a Prime Minister of the day acknowledge the laws and policies that had inflicted profound grief and suffering and loss. But for Mum and I, we may have shared more had we stayed together. But my anger and loss aided me in blaming her for a long time, a blame that I now know was misdirected and very much unwarranted. And because the apology dealt mainly with the stolen generation, I have been brought face to face with the reality of me, who is one of them. I was and still am a dormitory girl from Cherbourg. That is my identity. I am in my 93rd year, born in 29. You asked me, is it true? Yes, it is true. I have my birth certificate. But nevertheless, 93 years, I birthed 8 children and adopted 1. I now have, from those 8 children, 154 grandchildren, grannies, great-grannies, great-great-grannies, and great-great-great-grannies. Very proud of them all, and very much their matriarch. They have to do the right thing by their nana. I'm called Mimi now because I've gone over the nana stage. Because the apology with the stolen generation, I have been brought to the reality of me. Apology is 14-year-old. And as I sat and thought about it, I've done 3 other speeches on this apology. And I think as I look back on them, I keep every bit of paper that I have at home. Every bit. All my speeches, everything is kept, just in case. It's very much the same as what I delivered in the first one. The apology, I said, meant nothing to me. if you've lived in the dormitory in a system that took young children away from their mothers, how can you accept sorry? With everything that had happened to me during that time, I can't accept that anyone can be sorry for what has happened to me. I tried to teach my children, always stand firm, always be strong, because we haven't come out of that section yet. We are still under the state government's hand. We are still, most of us, wards of the state. So it's 14 years of age, 14 years old. And we speak of it like it was only a day old. That's what happened. It's as though it's a day old, and yet it's 14 years. Where is Kevin? We're the parliamentarians that were there at the time, because the whole speech was for them. It was for them. I was against it from the beginning, and resulting in my refusal to attend the gathering. So after 63 years, the apology is too late for me and my deceased mother, who died at 93. So we do have a good, long life ahead of us. We were both dormitory girls, Cherbourg dormitory. We both lived in that dormitory, in an institution for what we call it, the stolen generation. We lived there. She lived there until the government decided it was time for her to leave me and go to work. We experienced the harm that was done by our forced separation. It was forced on us, not only from each other, but we were forced against her parents, my grandparents. The impact was difficult to understand. It set apart a system of parent and child that caused injury, that caused shock and trauma, changing our lives, changing the lives of every child. And I meet them. I just met one this morning. We meet them all the time. Tell me about my mother. Tell me about life in the dormitory. I keep in touch with most of them. In fact, I have a list of all the names of the girls, 60 girls that was in that home with me. I keep their names in front of me. I never want to forget them. I am the only one that is alive. The only one that remains of all those kids that were in the dormitory. Yes, the effect is still being felt. Lots of our people have lost, and our children have lost. I think of the mothers. I think of the mothers. How would you like to lose a child at 4.5 years of age? For somebody to come and say to your mum, she has to go. She has to. And that was the beginning of our separation, both she and I. She was 19 years of age when we were removed from her parents. I was 6.5 months old. We weren't really removed from out west. We came voluntary because my grandfather was working at the time when the Depression was on, and he couldn't find work. And it was the police director who said, or the protector who said, why don't you go to Baramba? And he thought that was a good idea, to take himself and his wife and 7 children to Baramba, my mother and me included. My mum at the time was getting married to my father. Everything was prepared, but he was away somewhere trying to find work. And so she went with our parents. But I was keen to know about all of that because she and I had never ever discussed why I was in this dorm, why she was there, why we weren't allowed to see each other, why we weren't allowed to sit together, why she was not allowed to hug me. I wanted to know all about it. I'm one of these people that I call myself a sticky beak because I have to know everything that is happening. I asked her, when I began writing about our lives in our first book, Is That You, Ruthie? I went to her because it was my late husband. Before he died, he said, why don't you start writing? I only had a 4th grade education. And writing has always been something that I wanted to do. I was a good speaker. I could get out and speak on any subject. I was a Christian for 50 years. I can give sermons, but I wanted to write. I wanted to write about my life in the dormitory, and it would include her. I was keen to know. I began writing about our lives. Why were we here? Please tell me. Why were we in the dormitory? I knew nothing. She had not even disclosed anything. In fact, we hadn't had a conversation. She was well into her 70s when we began this conversation. Why were we here? So much time we'd spent in that dormitory. And in my first book, I wrote about that. Is that you, Ruthie? I must have been the naughtiest kid in that home. As I interviewed her, it was hard for her to tell me anything. I was her only child. She'd lost the man she was going to marry. I saw someone in so much pain written on her face. I wondered if I should do it. But her pain revealed what she hadn't spoken of all those years. I was now nearly 60 and anxious to hear anything. Ruth, she said, you and I came here to Cherbourg as a support unit for our parents, for my parents, and the young brothers and sisters. Sharon, could you give me a piece of rag out of that bag there? I have to demonstrate this. I usually do it. I could have some water too. We were to settle them down and leave them so that I could go back to Mitchell with you, where your father was waiting. Now, my father was a stranger to me until I was 56 years of age, when one day, she came to me and said, Ruth, you should find your father. What? I was married, had all my kids. I didn't know what to do. Have I got one? Everybody's got a father. I found him. I made it my business to do that. My parents were in the camp. You know, when we landed, she said, what we did was, she said, we all stood in front of the big office there at Cherbourg on the main street, and the superintendent came out. No one listened to me. I tried to tell him I'm only here for a little while to settle my parents down and the boys. And then she said, I will go back to Mitchell. Mitchell was her home. In fact, you will notice in that handout that she called herself a Maranoa woman, always. I didn't realise that Gungari and Maranoa had 2 different languages until I began to research all of that. And listening to her talking, I knew that there had to be another language other than Gungari, because she was speaking in her Maranoa stuff. Having not heard the story, I was anxious to hear it so that I could now write the book. "You grew up too fast," she said. "Too fast, Ruth. Because when we entered the dormitory, before we entered," she said, I said, "explain to me how it was that he told you to go, that you were residents of Cherbourg." And the only way she could explain to me was by, my mother wasn't very sophisticated. She said, "Take an old piece of rag, Ruth. Take this old piece of rag. Tear it into 3 parts. Your brothers go into the boys' dormitory. Your parents go to the camp and find some place to live. And you and your baby will go to the dormitory, to the women's dormitory." That's how simple it was. That's all he did, was to tear that piece of paper, piece of rag, and let us know where we would go. The matron who managed the 3 dorms said you were... Wait a minute, I'd heard that story. "And you grew up too fast." I was a fast grower. I must have been. I'm 93 now, just about. But the other women in the dormitory said to me, "Ruby, keep your baby on the breast as long as you can. Because the moment that child is off the breast, the matron takes them." She said, "You wouldn't stay there. You were, as my grandmother used to say to me, too andy-pandy. You were andy-pandy. You wouldn't stay on the breast. You crawled first, you walked, then you talked, and you wanted to go to school. I snuck to school. I needed that school. I didn't know how important education would be for me as I grew older. One of the days that my uncle brought me back from school, Uncle Nenny, he used to often say to me, "You make me shame." He had to bring me back to the dormitory. She said to my mother, she sent for her, "Ruth's old enough to go to school." I was bringing in a 4.5-year-old great-grandchild today. Can you imagine a child of 4.5 years of age being told, your mother being told, "I'm taking her off you"? Not one person would agree with me that that was a good thing. Ruth's going. It wasn't a happy time. What you didn't know is that it would be the end of our life together. 4.5 years. I was full of talk. But the apology for the laws and policies of the successive governments was to say sorry in 1900. It inflicted profound grief and suffering and loss to all of the stolen generation and their mothers. It is to the mothers I speak, because I lived in that place with all of those girls. In fact, I thought it was my home, and I became so bossy there. Everybody was in my place. It did. Our mothers and the grief that they suffered, not for one child, they would have taken 2 and 3 children. Because the parents couldn't agree, some domestic stuff, take the children out. put them in the dormitory, and it was from there that we were treated like criminals. We were. This first book of mine deals with all of that. Their children were forcibly removed. And the mother's heart, it's not one child, but two, was akin to the loss, only to the grave. I hear Archie singing that song and it makes me cry. They took the children away. They took them away. What about the mothers? Permission had to be granted for a visit on a Saturday afternoon for about 3 hours with the parent. And I know that the mothers craved these visits, to take the child, to show them out to all of their parents up in the camp. But if that child misbehaved, the mothers wasn't notified until she got to the dormitory on that Saturday morning. There's no permit for me. She had to get a permit to take that child for 3 hours and have her back in time for supper, because the child was on punishment and the child wouldn't have known about it. She was anxious for her mother to come and get her. They would have been anticipating this visit. I will see my mum this week. They were filled with joy and happiness to share time. Can there ever be a sorry for that? Can there ever be a sorry? It's not enough. I have been told that the removal policy affected almost every Aboriginal family. That's many thousands of people each year. As this date appears, I am reminded of the trauma I suffered as a child. I was always the little girl who sat on the other side of there was the women's section and the little girls section, divided by a wall of, what's his name? Something that you can see through. And I sat there that night when they said to me as I come home from school in my uniform, proud as anything, I'm going to tell Mum all about it. And I came home from my first day at school so excited. I ran up those high stairs, 28, I often counted them. And I was told, you can't be with your mum anymore. You are a big girl now. A big girl at 4 and a half? I still needed Mum. We slept in a bed not much wider than this. Single beds. Who will I sleep with tonight? That day is etched in my memory. Our relationship was severed that afternoon. After 14 years of living in that home, we must, and I reiterate this, we must, as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, stop giving this day over to the apology. We must stop it. I hope that it goes. In August 2009, the Australian government refused any compensation payment to our people in spite of the United Nations concern about the lack of access to justice. We must stop these types of events. In 1992, Paul Keating, when he was president, Prime Minister, in his Redfern speech said sorry, another sorry. In the year of the World Indigenous Peoples, 30 years ago, And his honest and frank words were not much different to what Kevin said. We did the possessing. We took the lands. We took the children from their mothers. We practiced discrimination. We failed in our duty of care to our First Nations people. They were all sorry, but still they're not doing much. They really are not. John Howard tried. His denial of the stolen generation, he said, I don't know if there was a stolen generation. He stated that Aboriginal people should get down on their knees and thank the government, which gave you the money for schools, plus food and clothing. The Liberal, National and Labor governments have all come to this issue through their own eyes. But I say, excuse me, said Joe. The raids on our funds was milked, that is the stolen wages, for over 72 million for department purposes. They milked our people. You know, many of us lived during that time. I'm not sure how many of you are even over 80, but we lived during those times. And the pain and suffering, it's real and life-changing. And I hope you take the time to read my story about Mum and remember the tens of thousands of children and their parents, mothers in particular, who were impacted by these unjust and racist policies of the past. Take the children away. Take them away. They've nearly all gone to their graves now. Very few of them. At the last reunion we had from the dormitory, one of the girls came to me and said, Aunty Ruth, what are we going to do when you go? What are we going to do? Yes, an activist and a speaker for those of our stolen children and all of their losses. We need more. We certainly need a lot more. Whilst this day doesn't help in my healing, it's an indication that Australia still has much to do to unite and recognise its First Nations people. I have a lot to do. The road ahead was filled with good intentions. It was. Promises, promises, promises. 2017, we sought to be heard. We gathered to introduce the Uluru Statement from the Heart, Makarrata Commission. The government has to listen to our leaders, not the elected ones, but the ones that are out there, the grassroots people. They have to listen to them. For changes will not come until they do get down to the very depth and listen to our people. It's only the changes that will free us. We are not one and free, as the anthem says. Grassroots people, even white people, have helped to close the gap, but the government hasn't done it. We've married into each other, our children apart, and we've done our job in reconciliation and in closing the gap. But the government has more to do. Listen to our leaders for changes, to our people, and only the changes will free us. There's a date of the Australia Day. There's the anthem. They changed one word. And I was fortunate to get a new one sent up from a judge down south who writes for my Donald. The anthem, "We Are Not One." This challenges our nation to overcome our colonial past by abolishing Australia Day and address the root of the issues that are there still. As we change governments, nothing happens. And how about the Constitution? Both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are not in the Constitution. We have to be there. We belong to this country. It is ours. And we greet everyone that comes. We share everything with everybody. I was asked to do a special there for people who are doing their new Australian, getting their certificate. And I said to the politician after, "You know what? I've got no certificate. I've got none." "Oh, thank you for coming, Aunty Ruth." "Yes," I said, "don't ask me again. Until we are recognised, then you can ask me. Don't ask me again." And I thank you all for coming here. I was scared stiff of coming. I was scared. Although I do most of these, my daughter says, "And give in your resignation today too, Mum." She doesn't like all the work I put on her. But we have much work to do. We are hoping to do a movie on Is That You, Ruthie? And that'll be the only one after the rabbit-proof fence. And we want that to go ahead, so there'll be much work to be done on that. But I thank you all. We are one people. We are one. Doesn't matter where we come from. As soon as we meet, who's your mob? Who's your mob? And we start joining the dots. Listen to your elders. Listen to your elders and learn your language, something I'm doing. And so I say thank you. I'll use the Gungari word, Nuala Nagara, and Yandala Ua. Peace be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aunty Ruth. Powerful words there. But I think the importance of having events like this is so that people can hear your story and others' stories as well. It's about educating the broader community about what happened to our people. So thank you for coming, and I hope you're not putting your resignation in today. Our next speaker is Minister Craig Crawford. Link Up Queensland Research Unit works really closely with the Community and Personal Histories team at the Department of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Partnerships. This partnership involves community and personal histories, providing Link Up Queensland with direct access to records created by the department during the protection era. These records are key to our work in piecing together family histories to reunite our stolen generations with their families. Please welcome the Honourable Craig Crawford MP, Minister for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Partnerships.
Thanks, Pat. And I was sitting there before thinking, please don't put me up after Ruth. Please don't put me up after Ruth. Can I say, Ruth, for someone... Thank you, Aunty Ruth. For someone who didn't want to come, You did a very impressive job. Thank you very much. Can you please give her another round of applause? That was moving. And please don't resign. We need you to keep doing this. We need more people to do this. All those grandkids and great-grandkids and great-grandkids, you need to keep the movement, keep the fire in the belly, keep the fire in the family. Thank you very much. I was truly moved listening to your speech. Thank you. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which this event is taking place? Can I pay my respects, to elders past and present? Can I acknowledge the continuing culture of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the unique contribution that they have made to the life of this city, to this region, to this state and to this nation. I want to acknowledge Ken Murphy, Chair of Link Up and the Link Up Board, Pat Thompson, the CEO of Link Up, Pat Turner, it's a Pat Day today, isn't it? Pat Turner, the CEO of Nacho. I think Terri Butler is here or is arriving maybe soon. No, she's at Apology today. Okay. I think Amy McMahon is here, the member for South Brisbane. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for coming along. And everyone else who's assembled here today and also online. Each year on this date, or yesterday's date, we're reminded of our nation's greatest shame and our greatest regret, the forced removal of First Nations people, the stolen generation. As the 1997 Bringing Them Home report found, for individuals, their removal as children and the abuse they experienced at the hands of the authorities or their delegates have permanently scarred their lives. The harm continues in later generations, affecting their children and grandchildren. And I think Ruth's presentation very much captured that sentiment perfectly. 25 years on from the Bringing Them Home report and 14 years on from the National Apology, this statement rings true every day. As I reflect on the lasting devastation and intergenerational trauma experienced by mothers, fathers and children of the stolen generation, whose connection to family, land, culture and language was stripped, I am overwhelmed with the sense that more needs to be done. That as a government, we must do more. We must do better. We still have unfinished business. In some states, such as Queensland, some of that work is currently underway, but there is still much more work to do. Making 54 recommendations, the Bringing Them Home report called for an official acknowledgement of and apology for the forcible removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. As we know, the National Apology was delivered by Kevin Rudd 14 years ago yesterday. As that speech was delivered, the nation stood still and listened. I can recall that speech and I can recall the wave of emotion that swept over First Nations people across this country. Those who had always been seen and systematically treated as less than, and those whose children were taken away were finally acknowledged as equal, their pain and suffering finally validated. As that speech was made, many non-Indigenous Australians, some for the first time, sat up and listened and recognised and empathised the ongoing suffering experienced by First Nations people. Shifting the mindset across the nation, the National Apology, I believe, was a turning point. 14 years have passed since that apology. As the Queensland Minister for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Partnerships, I echo the words of the former Prime Minister. Like all states, Queensland has a dark past. Former governments legislated in the most egregious way policies that dehumanised First Nations peoples. One piece of legislation, the Aboriginal Protection and Restriction of the Sale of Opium Act 1897, allowed the Queensland Government to take thousands of your forebears from their traditional lands and with no regard, virtually imprison them in our own equivalent of 16 gulags across the state. That was my predecessor, and I often reflect on that moment. As the current minister, if I was a minister in 1897, that would have been my bill, that would have been my speech, that would have been what I would have done. And as I often sit in Parliament, undergoing the business of Parliament, that moment reflects on me all the time, to think that it is someone that holds my title, someone that sits in my chair, did this, and other things, all those times ago. While the national apology pushes states to hold up the mirror to its own wrongdoings and helped shifted minds and hearts across the nation, what we need now more than ever is for the national apology to be demonstrated through persistent and radical action. In March 2019, the historic partnership agreement on closing the gap, setting out a new relationship between all Australian governments, the coalition of peaks and the Australian Local Government Association was signed. As the nation commits to focusing on 4 priority reform areas and achieving 17 national targets, we are more united than ever and are taking real action to reach those targets set. Reflected in the Queensland Government's implementation plan, across government, ministers and agencies are working to ensure targets are on track. We know that to achieve the targets sets a new relationship that needs to be established. That's why our government, the Palaszczuk government, has made its statement of commitment, committing to reframing its relationship with First Nations Queenslanders through local thriving communities and path to treaty. Enabling greater self-determination through our local thriving communities agenda, we are facilitating greater participation in decision-making for Queensland's Indigenous communities, because we know they are best placed to make decisions about what is needed to build their communities and on the service delivery that impacts them every day. And at the heart of a reframed relationship is also the need for truth, reconciliation and reparation. This forms a basis of Queensland's path to treaty. In the coming weeks, the Queensland Government's response to the Treaty Advancement Committee report will be released, setting out the next steps for truth-telling, healing and treaty-making in this state. Truth-telling is the basis of which treaties can be negotiated, because we know that the devastation of the past cannot be addressed without the whole community listening with an open mind and an open heart. Integral to truth-telling is the work of Link Up, who have been supporting disconnected Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people since 1984 and will continue to play an essential role in connecting people back to family, to culture and truth, providing space for those who have suffered to have a voice and to tell their stories, and to enable those impacted directly and our nation and state to begin to heal. In closing, I want to express my gratitude to Link Up for your care, compassion and incredible efforts in reuniting families. I thank community leaders and elders, some who are here today, who don't stop fighting for justice, for equality, and who keep governments like ours accountable. Lastly, I want to recognise that despite the atrocious acts of past governments, First Nations people remain proud, resilient and strong. This is a testament to the intangible and indescribable strength that lies within your culture and spirit, a strength and culture the rest of us can learn from. As a government, it is our job to support First Nations people to share that culture, strength and resilience with the rest of Queensland. I look forward to continuing to partner with First Nations peoples as we work towards closing the gap on Indigenous disadvantage and creating a brighter future for First Nations generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Minister, and we certainly appreciate the support that we continue to get from your office and your department so that we can continue to research our families' histories to help to reunite them. I'd now like to welcome Rochelle Pitt to the stage to perform for us. Rochelle is a Nunukal, Nuji and Meriam descent and started singing and performing at a young age in the churches and choirs of Far North Queensland. Her long journey has forged a powerful voice that celebrates the strength, beauty and love within all of us. In recent years, Rochelle has found mainstream success as she went from nurse and mother to star on Australia's The X Factor. Too deadly she was there too. Today, Rochelle continues to enjoy performances across Australia at music festivals, community events and in the corporate sector. She is also a proud ambassador for APRA, AMCOS, advocating for the rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander singers, songwriters and passionately supports organisations such as Kidney Health Australia. Please welcome Rochelle.
Thank you very much, Aunty. Bless your heart. Thank you for inviting me to sing today on this 14th commemoration of the apology. Wonderful. I love coming to these events because this is where I see all my aunties and uncles and all my relations and community. It makes me strong inside my heart, my spirit, to keep doing the work that I do. So a little bit about my family. I have two dads who grew me up. So Dad Lenny Watson, my Watson family, Wiri Birigaba, and also my Pitt family, who my dad, David Neko Pitt, from Meriam people, as well as we just, finding out a little bit more, which I'll come to link up actually for some support there, but also Nugi Nunaku people as well, and Calcutta. So one of the important parts of that apology as well was different aspects came from that in regards to closing the gap with health, but also in our language and finding out the language of our ancestors, our people. So this song I'm going to sing for you today is a Wiri Birigaba language song. And my dad Lenny passed away a couple of years ago now. And I dedicate this to him and to all our old ones, our loved ones, our elders who have passed. And I'll interpret that song as we go. Mr. John Corowa is my deadly musician today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy his music. From here, strong we stand. Remember, know, and understand. Ooh, hear and listen. Dance, dance, my woman. Dance, dance, my man. Welcome to my festival. Welcome to my country land festival. Jandajinia, Kia. Jandajinia, Nani Kia. Yendamandu, Yuribaya Dana. I said, Yendamandu, Yuribaya Dana. Judah, 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 Yimba, Yimba, Yimba. Judah, Judah, Judah. Yimba, yimba, yimba. What a dear Marie. What a dear Gayu. What a dear Marie. Jana Jinia. Kia. Jana Jinia.
Thanks very much, Rochelle. Can we have another round of applause for her, please? When we were organising this event, we were talking about who we could get to sing a couple of songs today, and I said, I'll try and track down Rochelle. I had to take my son out to the Inala Indigenous Health Service to have his vaccination, because Rochelle's a nurse, of course. So we go in there and he's Rochelle giving the vaccinations out. So I think that's how we do business. Thank you very much. Our second keynote speaker is Patricia Turner, the daughter of an Aunty man and a Gurdanji woman, I hope I got that right, Pat, who was raised in Alice Springs. Pat is the CEO of NACHO. She is at the forefront of community efforts to close the gap in health outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Pat has over 40 years' experience in senior leadership roles in government, in business, academia, and including being the only Indigenous woman and longest serving CEO of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. Amongst her many appointments, Pat has spent 18 months as Monash Chair of Australian Studies, Georgetown University, Washington DC, and was the inaugural CEO of NITV. So she set up NITV and look where it is now. Pat is the Coalition of Peaks convener and co-chair of the Joint Council on Closing the Gap. She holds a master's degree in public administration from the University of Canberra, where she was awarded the University Prize for Development Studies. Please welcome Pat to the stage.
Hello everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the lady for the welcome to country this morning, and Dr. Hegarty, you are a very hard act to follow. And thank you very much for being so wise and clear with the messages that you shared with us today, which I know that we'll all take to heart and do our very best to keep up the hard work of achieving justice for all our people. So, as Patricia has already said, I'm Pat Turner, the CEO of NACHO, and the lead convener of the coalition of peaks, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled peak organisations. But I am foremost an Aboriginal woman, the daughter of an Aranda man and a Gaddanji woman. I am part of a kinship structure where I am a sister, a cousin, an auntie and a grandma, with all the cultural and caring obligations. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are standing, the Turrbal people from the north side of the river and the Juggera peoples from the south side, and pay my respects to elders past and present. These traditional owners, like my family and First Nations peoples, were and still are protectors and carers of our families, our country and our cultures, and work to ensure our children and future generations thrived. We have been protecting and caring for our families and our children for more than 60,000 years. I think we know a bit about it by now. So I say this when we reflect on the past that brings us together today, as well as the future we are seeking. We always remember the strength that is in our people, our culture and our own ways. Since colonisation, numerous government laws, policies and practices resulted in the forced removal of generations of our children. From 1910 to the 1970s, thousands of our children were forcibly removed by governments, churches and welfare bodies to be raised in institutions, fostered out or adopted by non-Indigenous families, nationally and internationally. These children are known as the stolen generations. The exact number of children who were removed may never be known, but there are very few families who have been left unaffected. In some families, children from 3 or more generations were taken. The removal of children broke our cultural, spiritual and family ties, and we have been left with a lasting and intergenerational impact on the lives and well-being of our peoples and communities. Affecting anywhere from 1 in 10 to 1 in 3 children, there is not a single Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander community who has not been forever altered. It is important that we understand how widespread the impact is for our First Nations peoples when we both look back and seek to heal our past, and when we look forward and reclaim our future. The National Apology was an important step forward in our healing journey for our peoples and for families and our relationship as First Peoples with the settler state. But this was just step one step. The Commonwealth Government announcement to provide compensation to the survivors of the stolen generations who were removed from the federal jurisdictions of the Northern Territory, the Australian Capital Territory and Jervis Bay last year was another welcome step. A step that came off the back of decades of campaigning and storytelling from survivors and descendants, including a class action lawsuit, since the landmark Bringing Them Home report in 1997, although it was a step too late for my mother and for many others. In healing from the past, there are more steps to take. All jurisdictions need to take the step of redress and compensation. This includes the Queensland Government, who have so far failed to take any meaningful step to compensate for the harm to our children and families caused by their policies of removal. In reclaiming our future, we need to urgently address the current rates of removal of our children from our families and communities. The Steering Committee of the Review of Government Service Provision recently released new figures showing that 22,297 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children were separated from their families in out-of-home care and other supported care as of the 30th of June 2021. These figures are the legacy of the stolen generations and continue to shed light on one of the most shameful impacts of colonisation. In overcoming the legacy and in reclaiming our future, we need to remember the strength and the power of our own cultures, kinship structures and families to chart a new future for our children. In 2019, a group of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled peak organisations came together as a part of a movement across the country to share in decisions with governments about the policies and programs that impact on our people's lives. The Coalition of Peaks negotiated and agreed with all governments a new national agreement on closing the gap. The national agreement is a commitment from governments for our own organisations, to a new future and a new way of working between our people's organisations and governments. The national agreement has put addressing the rates of our children in out-of-home care and supporting our children squarely on the national agenda. Led by the hard work of Snake, the national voice of our children, the Coalition of Peaks negotiated hard for an expanded focus on our children under closing the gap. The national agreement includes several socio-economic targets that relate to our children's well-being, covering healthy birth weight, development and early childhood education. We also push governments to agree a target to reduce the rates of our children in out-of-home care. These targets set the nation a clear focus by which governments will be held to account as they report publicly on progress every year. Importantly, the national agreement also sets a practical path forward for a nation on how to achieve these targets through 4 priority reforms. Priority reform 1 is about shared decision-making between our peoples and our organisations and governments to ensure the full involvement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at the state, national, regional and local levels on policies and programs that impact on us. Priority Reform 1 takes us beyond the notion that governments know best. It positions our knowledge as central to any policy and program response to the issues that we face and says we must be heard. This is crucial if we are to support our children to grow strong and address the rates of out-of-home care where the root causes are embedded in our experiences as colonised people and where it is us that have the solutions to the issues we face. Priority Reform 2 is a commitment to strengthen and place our community-controlled services at the heart of delivering programs and services to our people. Community control is an act of self-determination for our people. No other way of delivering and governing services or providing us with a say in government policy guarantees Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander empowerment and protects our identity and culture for the long term. There is strong evidence that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled services are much better for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. They achieve better results and help make sure we get the support we need. Our community-controlled early education, family support and health services are vital to support our families and our children, maintain and strengthen our culture and ensure our peoples feel safe to access the support they need. In developing the responses to the Closing the Gap targets, we would expect to see a priority emphasis on the role of community-controlled organisations. We would also expect this to be backed by significant and long-term funding. Priority Reform 3 is a commitment by governments to ensure that mainstream government agencies and institutions that deliver services and programs to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people undertake systemic and structural transformation to contribute to the closing the gap. Although the priority must be on building our community-controlled services sector to deliver the services our people need, not all the services at this stage are able to be provided by a community-controlled organisation. In addressing the rates of out-of-home care, this is particularly relevant to our interactions with the child protection system. Systemic racism proliferates all the facets of the child protection system, from the care workers who remove our children to the police and teachers who make the calls to child protection to notify of alleged abuse or neglect. It is no wonder that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families do not see that those working in and around the safety and well-being of our children as a place to go for support that they in fact may need. I'm talking about the government agencies there. Priority Reform 3 demands that the child protection system and family and children's health and well-being services and those that work within them to recognise the damage and that the current approach has had on our culture, our identities and our corresponding well-being and experiences of harm. Importantly, Priority Reform 3 also commits governments and those working in the child protection system to take steps to heal the past and to take an active decolonising approach. Priority Reform 4 is a commitment to ensuring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have access to and the capability to use locally relevant data and information to monitor the implementation of the three priority reforms, the closing the gap targets, and to drive our own development. Better access to data means that we can make better decisions for our futures and hold governments to account. Priority Reform 4 means that the data on our children and families is not used for coercive control. Where data is not being used by others to judge and assess us by Western ideals and to continue to perpetuate racialised stereotypes that justifies the removal of our children. Priority Reform 4 is about jointly deciding in partnerships between our community-controlled representatives, governments and other organisations, what data is important to capture that tells the story of children's experiences based on what is important to us. And then using that data together to make more informed decisions about the policies and programs that are designed to support us. The priority reforms reflect what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been saying for decades is needed and provide a comprehensive practical framework to support our children to grow up strong and confident in our own cultures and identities. Today, as we look back and continue to seek reparations, to heal the past, we must look forward and claim our futures for our children and for the survival of our peoples as First Nations peoples with strong cultural identities. We have a way forward. Let's seize it together. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat. Thank you for your passion. Pat retired from the workforce a few years ago for a period of time. And I, as many others are so pleased that she's back in the workforce. We need people like Pat to continue to take up the fight at a national level and to continue to inspire and mentor our young people. So just like Aunty Ruth, Pat, there's no retirement for you yet. Joining Apology 2022 on behalf of our local federal member, Terri Butler, is Sarah Anderson. The anniversary of the National Apology is a day to remember the grief, suffering and injustice, to celebrate those who have sought justice and healing and those who continue to support efforts to reunite Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families in Queensland. We are grateful at Link Up Queensland for the continued show of support from Terri Butler's office. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Sarah Anderson and I'm here today on behalf of the member for Griffith, Terri Butler MP. Terri was very sad that she was unable to be with you this year because of the parliamentary sitting. She is in Canberra today, and so she asked me to read this message on her behalf. It is as follows. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land over which sovereignty was never ceded. I pay my respects to elders past and present. I acknowledge too all members of the stolen generations and their families who are present today or who are watching these proceedings remotely, including anyone connected with the former Cranbrook House. I acknowledge members of Parliament and councillors, members of the Link Up Queensland Board, CEO Ms Pat Thompson AM, whom I congratulate on her recent well-deserved appointment as a member of the Order of Australia. And all of the staff and supporters of Link Up Queensland who work so hard to bring people home and bring families together. Each year we remember the Bringing Them Home report tabled in Federal Parliament on the 26th of May 1977 following the national inquiry into the separation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families commenced under the Keating government. That report and the trauma inflicted on the stolen generations are acknowledged each year on National Sorry Day in May. The Bringing Them Home report emphasised the importance of apology and acknowledgement. The report said, the first step in any compensation and healing for victims of gross violations of human rights must be an acknowledgement of the truth and the delivery of an apology. The report observed that Australian governments have only very recently admitted to the history of forcible removals and its effects, and it recommended that each Australian Parliament officially acknowledge the responsibility of their predecessors for the laws, policies and practices of forcible removal. The imperative was clear to anyone that read the report. The Prime Minister needed to give an apology on behalf of country to the stolen generations. A quarter of the century after the Bringing Them Home report, we can look back on the resistance that was mounted by some in the community and the government at the time against the idea of an apology. Resistance to giving an apology was resistance to acknowledging the truth. It represented a preference for a different version of history, one that was less confronting for some, but contributed to the ongoing dispossession of First Nations peoples. But the moral force of the argument for an apology made it compelling. Australians wanted their government to face up to the past, acknowledge the truth and give an apology. It took a change of government for that to happen, but finally on 13th February 2008, a little more than a decade after Bringing Them Home, the then newly elected Prime Minister and local member for the electorate in which we now stand, and which I have the honour to represent, gave the apology to the stolen generations in the House of Representatives. So this year marks the 14th anniversary of the National Apology. It is a day to remember the grief and suffering of the stolen generations, their families and their communities. It's a day to listen and a day to seek to understand. And it is a day to acknowledge the importance of truth-telling and of being honest about our shared history. There is much more truth-telling to come. If Labor forms government at the next election, we have committed that there will be a national process of truth-telling. We have done so as part of our broader and ongoing commitment to the Uluru Statement from the Heart. To all who are here and all who are listening, thank you for allowing me to pass this message to you. I end, as always, on an expression of my gratitude to all of those who are continuing to work towards justice and to link up Queensland, and all who undertake the difficult, emotional and significant work of reuniting families and bringing people home. Your compassion sets an example for all. Thank you, Terri Butler.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and we also are grateful for the support that Terri Butler's office continues to provide to Link Up Queensland. Please welcome back Rochelle Pitt to share another performance with us. Thank you, Rochelle.
Back again. Thank you very much. This time I'm going to do some representation for my Meriam family side in the Eastern Islands of the Torres Strait, Arab. And I hope you like this song. This is an old song written by the old people from up top. Sometimes it's a bit debated who writes what, you know, and then everyone starts singing it and they say it's a traditional song. Like Tabanaba is one of those ones now. But this song I'm going to sing for you is called Waikari Baged. I want to pay special thanks too to Uncle Ken. Meeting him today was deadly. He knows my family, and he said he spent all that time up in Cairns, and it's just wonderful to hear those old stories. Yeah, I know. I keep them special stories secret, Uncle. Yeah, but I hope you enjoy this song, Waikari Baged, Meriam. Pull up this time. I hope you feel like you're on an island somewhere on the beach, just staring out at that beautiful sea, that blue sea. Ah, yeah, yeah. Waikari Baged, Baged Iki de marina camie no kimara gogop das mereda Waikari Baged here Waikari Baged, Magena Didawa, Iki de Marina Camie, no Kimara Gogop das Merata, Waikari Baged. Lays like smoke upon the sea and almost hides my loving home from me. Oh, my island home, goodbye. Oh, Waikari Baged. Get not did that why Iki de marina camie no kima ragogop das mereda Waikari Baged here Waikari Baged.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Too deadly. So we're at the end of the program now, and Aunty Ruth mentioned earlier her book about her mother. So as she said, Link Up has a copy of this for everyone in the audience today, and it's my pleasure to launch this book. Buthalangi, The Maranoa Woman, is a fantastic reconstruction of her mother, Ruby's life. The story captures Aunty Ruth's ancestry during a dark time in Australia's history. These stories are important to put in writing and to share with family and community. In the 1990s, at the age of 70, that was a long time ago, Aunty Ruth, Aunty Ruth's memoir is That You Ruthie was awarded the prestigious David Unaipon Award. The sequel, Bittersweet Journey, was published in 2003, and more recently, Aunty Ruth self-published Jack's story, The Life and Times of a Cherbourg Dormitory Boy. Buthalangi is her fourth book. Congratulations, Aunty Ruth, on your latest book. And we're really proud that you've asked us to launch this here today, so thank you very much. If I could just ask before we finish the program now that we have some gifts to present to our speakers. So Rebecca and Kerry are here, so just down the front, I think Aunty Ruth. Just stay there, Aunty Ruth, we'll bring it over. Aunty Cheryl. And Pat, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. Rochelle, could you come forward, please? Behind you. And we have Sarah, if you could come forward, and Farley, is Farley here? Farley's not here, right, okay. That's the end of our program, so thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you, Aunty Ruth, for coming and sharing your story. It's inspiring. And I'd just like to acknowledge our board of directors. Uncle Ken is there, our chairman, looking to say something.
Yeah, the minister, can I have his flowers?
We didn't get the minister flowers. And I also would like to thank the Link Up staff. We've got a wonderful group of staff at Link Up Queensland. Who all work really, really hard to pull together events like this, and I think what it demonstrates is the respect that we have for our mob out there. So thank you all very much for attending. Thank you, Murray Menu, for morning tea again this morning. The girls do a wonderful job, so thank you very much.